Let's talk about view rendering. So far, you've seen how to bootstrap an Express application, and we have also seen a bit of middleware. Views refer to the UI or pages that the user sees. It is the view that helps capture information from the user in the form of interaction, and it is the view that presents the processed data back to the user. So naturally, we would want our views to be dynamic in nature. We would want the content in the view to change as needed. And for this purpose, we've got templating languages. There are many templating languages out there, and essentially what they do is they take the data such as a JavaScript object and they extract and inject this data into a given template. So here you can see an object being fed into a paragraph tag that has some weird looking tags in red. When the templating engine processes this page, it takes this data and inserts it into these placeholder tags. This is the sort of thing we are used to seeing in PHP, Ruby, and other server-side languages, where data is rendered inside HTML structures. In the case of JavaScript-based templating languages, this can also be used on the client side, where data can be fetched and displayed in a predefined structure. We, however, are going to use a template language on the server within our Node.js app. Most Express examples demonstrate a templating language called Jade, which looks like this. This requires the HTML on the left to be rewritten as the one on the right, before data could be inserted in. I am personally against the idea, and this also means that the UI that you may get from the design team would have to be rewritten in Jade first before an integration into an Express app is sought. This is most certainly not an appealing proposition. Even though the Jade syntax is simple and fast, there is quite a learning curve involved, which we can actually avoid. Therefore, we will not use Jade while building ChatCat, but instead we'll use EJS, which stands for Embedded JavaScript. EJS can be used on the client as well as with Node.js, and it's really easy to understand. You bring in your data, such as a JavaScript object, and you render the view page using EJS, and it inserts in the data for you. You can see an EJS tag here. It essentially consists of a set of angle brackets within which we use a percentage sign and an equal to, which means that we need the value from a variable called name. There are many other notations and features that EJS provides. However, our use case would be limited to just this one format alone. EJS also lets you loop over an array and produce a list, and also allows you to insert HTML elements in place as needed. So let's incorporate EJS into our project and see how it all works. Alright, so now is the time to go and fetch the UI files which you downloaded earlier in this section. At the bottom, I have the chatcat_begin folder which was extracted from the archive I downloaded from the download section. And at the top is our ChatCat application folder. The first thing I'll do is create a folder called views, and inside this folder, I'll copy all my HTML files like so. Next, go back to the root level of your application folder and let's create a folder called public. This will house all our static assets like images, style sheets, and JavaScript client libraries such as jQuery. So quite simply, I'll copy the CSS, IMG, and JS folders from my UI pack into the public folder. Now back in our server.js, let's remove this middleware function as we don't need it, and before we bring in EJS, let's see how we can serve a static HTML page. Remember, we did something like this when we made our own web server. Let's see how it's done in Express. So for the root route, let's comment out the res.send statement, and instead we'll use the res.sendFile method. Inside the send file method, simply place the complete and absolute path to the file that you want to serve. To create the path, we'll use the _dir name keyword, and you would recall that this fetches you the folder path within which the calling script, that is server.js in this case, resides. Once we have that, we can simply concatenate the path to our views folder and to an HTML file. Let's do that for the login.html file which sits in the views folder like so. Now if you go back and refresh the page, you can see that we are indeed getting our HTML page, though the style sheet is missing. Don't worry, we'll fix that up soon. You can see by using a single built-in method called sendFile, we get the ability to read and serve files from disk. You'll also notice that we didn't manually set any HTTP headers such as content type. This is because the sendFile method deduces and sets this for us. By looking at the file extension, the sendFile method sends the most appropriate content type header for us. This obviously does not mean that you cannot customize it. You can customize the headers and behavior as well. The Express.js documentation on the Express website provides a great insight into the sendFile method. We built all of this functionality earlier in this course, and you can see how Express helps you speed up development. Now, sendFile does precisely that. It serves a static file. So while it works for simple static pages, it doesn't help you render dynamic templates where custom data has to be inserted in. For that purpose, we use a different mechanism altogether. So let's focus our energies on that for now. First up, let's install EJS. I have another console open and I suggest you do the same since I'm assuming that, like me, you're also using NodeMon on the other console. So type out npm install EJS at 2.3.4 followed by --save and --save-exact. This will download EJS into your node_modules folder and will update the package.json's dependencies section to reflect EJS version 2.3.4. Now to render the login.html file using EJS, we'll use the res.render method and we'll pass in the name of the file minus the extension. So res.render and within the brackets type login within quotes like so. When using EJS, your view files also need to have the EJS extension. So begin by renaming login.html as login.ejs. Now so far, we have not brought EJS into our app. To do that, we'll set the view engine property to use EJS like so. Here, we are using app.set, just like how we used it earlier to set a custom property called port. Only this time, we are setting a property called view engine. This is not a custom property but comes built in with Express. You'll also notice that we did not use any require statement to bring the EJS module in. This is because when we set the view engine property to EJS as shown here, Express will internally invoke a require statement and will bring a module called EJS in. The second part of this statement, that is EJS in quotes, automatically invokes a module import. The purpose of the view engine property here is to assign a templating engine when no specific file extension is mentioned when using the res.render method. We did not type .ejs when we used the res.render method, so Express will automatically use EJS files with the EJS templating module. Now let me demonstrate how EJS works. In our login.ejs file, let's replace this text which says login with a string that we'll inject from within the Express app. So back in server.js, as the second argument to the res.render method, pass in an object with a key called page title and let's set this to a string my login page like so. In the login.egs page, replace the word login with an EJS tag with the variable name page title like so. Refresh the page and you can see the contents of the page title key rendered within our h1 tag. So let's rename all files as .ejs. The login page actually doesn't require any templating, but we'll just render it anyway. You can opt out for this page if you like and use good old send file instead. You may be wondering by now how Express is able to find the login file when we use res.render. We didn't construct any path to the file like how we did when using the send file. The way this works is by default, Express expects all dynamic templates to reside in a folder called views, and that is precisely what we have here. You don't need to explicitly configure Express to do so, but if you want the folder to be named something else, you can always use the app.set method to configure the built-in views property to set it to a folder like so. Here, app.set with the views property being set to the views folder is not needed, but should you need to configure it, this is how you would do it. You also don't need to use the _dir name keyword here, as Express resolves the path from the root of the app folder within which server.js is invoked. So let's get rid of this statement altogether. So next up, let's bring back our style sheet and other static assets like images.